You're listening to the Chapter a Day Bible Study. I'm John Stange, and today we're in Deuteronomy 9. God gave the promised land despite Israel's unrighteousness. As Moses continues speaking to Israel before they enter the promised land, Deuteronomy 9 delivers a message that cuts straight to the heart of human pride. The people are about to inherit a land filled with strong nations and fortified cities. It would be easy for them to assume that their victory was the result of their own righteousness or strength. But Moses corrects that thinking immediately. In verses 1 and 2, he says this, "Hear, O Israel, you are to cross over the Jordan today, to go in to dispossess nations greater and mightier than you, a people great and tall, the sons of the Anakim." The task ahead is clearly beyond their ability. If they succeed, it won't be because they were stronger. It will be because God is faithful. And then Moses gives a warning that we all need to hear. In verse 4, he says, "Do not say in your heart, after the Lord your God has thrust them out before you, it is because of my righteousness that the Lord has brought me in to possess this land." That instinct, that idea of taking credit for what God has done, that's something that's deeply rooted in us. We like to believe we've earned the good things we've seen in our lives. We want to feel deserving. But Moses is clear. Israel wasn't receiving the land because they were righteous. In fact, he reminds them of the opposite. In verse 6, he says, "Know therefore that the Lord your God is not giving you this good land to possess because of your righteousness, for you are a stubborn people." Now, that word stubborn isn't very flattering, but it is accurate. And what Moses does next stands out even more. He calls them to remember their history, not their victories, but their failures. And he brings up the incident at Mount Horeb where they made the golden calf. While Moses was on the mountain receiving the law, the people quickly turned aside from God's commands. In verse 12 we read, "They have made themselves a metal image. They have turned aside quickly out of the way that I commanded them." This wasn't a minor slip. It was outright rebellion. God was ready to judge them, even to the point of destroying them and starting over with Moses. But Moses interceded. He stood between a holy God and a sinful people and pleaded for mercy. In verse 18, Moses recounts how he fasted and he prayed for 40 days and 40 nights. He said, "Then I lay prostrate before the Lord as before, 40 days and 40 nights because of all your sin that you had committed." He appealed to God's promises, reminding him of his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And he asked God not to let the nations misunderstand his character. So what we see in this chapter is a powerful contrast. On one side, there's human stubbornness, rebellion, and quickness to turn away from God. But on the other side, there's God's mercy, patience, and faithfulness to his promises. And right in the middle, we see a mediator. Moses stands in the gap. He intercedes for the people. He pleads on their behalf when they deserve judgment. Without his intervention, the outcome would have been very different. And this points us directly to Jesus. Like Israel, we are not righteous on our own. We might not build golden calves, but our hearts are just as prone to wander. We put other things in God's place. We trust our own efforts, and many of us have to admit that we have a daily habit of doing that very thing. And often we assume we're doing way better than we actually are. Scripture reminds us that all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. We see that in Romans 3:23, and that isn't just a general statement about humanity. It's something we should take very personal because it applies to each of us. But just as Moses interceded for Israel, Jesus intercedes for us in a far greater way. Jesus isn't just a mediator who pleads for mercy. He's the one who makes mercy possible. He lived the righteous life we couldn't live and then gave himself as a sacrifice for our sin. On the cross, he took the judgment we deserved. Through his resurrection, he secured the victory that we could never achieve on our own. The book of Hebrews in Hebrews 7:25 tells us that Jesus always lives to make intercession for us. That means he continually comes before the Father on our behalf, not because we've earned it, but because he loves us and has paid the price for us. Deuteronomy 9 reminds us that our relationship with God has never been based on our performance. It's always been rooted in God's grace. And that truth should reshape how we think about everything. It humbles us because we realize we aren't as righteous as we sometimes imagine. But it also gives us a deep sense of assurance because we see that God's faithfulness doesn't depend on our perfection. When Israel entered the Promised Land, they did so because God kept his word, not because they earned it. In the same way, we enter into a relationship with God through Christ, not because we deserve it, but because Jesus himself has made the way. So instead of taking credit, we're invited to remember who we were, remember what God has done, and remember the mercy that has been shown to us again and again and again. And as we remember, our hearts begin to change. Pride gives way to gratitude. Self-reliance gives way to trust. And we find ourselves worshiping not because we've achieved something, but because we've received something that we could never earn. Deuteronomy 9 is a call to humility, but it's also a reminder of hope. God knows exactly who we are, and he still chooses to show us mercy. Through Jesus, that mercy is secure, complete, and eternal. Thanks again for listening to today's episode of the Chapter a Day Bible Study. For more resources to help you in your walk with Christ and your understanding of the Bible, please visit my website at BibleStudyHeadquarters.com. And if you'd like to partner with me by becoming a supporter of this ministry, you'll see a few options to do so, again, at BibleStudyHeadquarters.com or in the description of this episode. As always, thank you for your prayers, thank you for your support, and thank you for your willingness to share this content with others. Have a great day, and I'll see you again right here tomorrow.